Cinema Shogun here, and it's the story that started it all for this YouTube channel. The story that originally brought us all together. Of course, I am talking about the Gabby Petito story. If any of you all have been watching my channel since I covered the Gabby Petito story, let me know down in the comments below, because that lets me know that you truly are a day one. But anyways, the Gabby Petito story has always been kind of bittersweet for me. On one hand, it's a tragic story. It's a very sad, heartbreaking situation, but trying to look at the bright side of things, at the very least, this story brought a lot of us together. Gabby Petito inspired a lot of people, including myself, to start speaking out for victims. Gabby Petito inspired me to try to be a voice for the voiceless, to try to create a platform where I could raise awareness about certain situations and highlight some of the horrible things that people are going through in this world. So when I look at the Gabby Petito story, even though it's a really sad story, I can't help but acknowledge that, I wouldn't be here talking to you all right now if it wasn't for this story. And I believe that this story was a starting point for others as well, to really get, their voices out there, to really try to stand for what's right, to really try to be a positive influence, a positive voice online where there's so much negativity, there's so much nonsense being spread. So it's hard for me to really explain, but even though Gabby's story and what happened between her and Brian, even though it's so tragic, at the same time, I can't help but acknowledge that some beautiful things came out of it. And I think that's the case with a lot of these stories. Regardless of how crazy and how, sad or evil some of these stories can be, there's always some good that comes out of it. And I think that Gabby Petito would appreciate that, and I think her family would appreciate, I think they would like knowing that so many people were inspired by her story, and that she gave a lot of people a voice who, before her case, were maybe afraid to even speak, maybe even afraid to speak out. I wasn't afraid to speak or afraid to speak out, but the story definitely gave me a new drive to not just waste my platform, not to just sit on here talking about things that don't matter all the time, but instead using my voice, using my drive, and using my platform to spread awareness and to help victims and to get stories out there about victims and things of that nature. But anyways, I know it seems like it's been forever since this story happened. I know it seems like it's been forever because the news cycle, it moves so quickly. Our lives are flying by so quickly, so much going on these days. There's so much going on these days that a year feels like a decade. A year feels like at least 5 years, if you ask me. But in all reality, not that much time has passed. In the grand scheme of things, not that much time has passed since we were all sitting here on YouTube talking about this story, trying to find out where Brian Laundrie was. We were all wondering, right? Well, I told you all back then, a long time ago, that we will never truly know everything about this story. I told you all that for months, weeks, maybe even years to come, new details will continue to surface about this story. Obviously, we have several lawsuits going on, a lot of things going on that front, but now we're getting, little tidbits of new information, and we now have some insight into Brian's interactions with his friends after he killed Gabby and returned home without her. In fact, I believe there were a few text messages that were just released from Brian to one of his friends, and I want to go over them with you all right here, right now. Let's go ahead and see what Brian was saying in the days after he returned home after killing Gabby. Days after Brian Laundrie admittedly strangled his girlfriend Gabby Petito on a cross-country road trip, he exchanged text messages with a friend nonchalantly detailing the fun travels but failed to mention the grisly murder. Trip was good, Laundrie wrote to his pal Ben on September 4th, 2021, after he had returned to Florida without Petito, but before she was reported missing to authorities by her family, according to newly revealed text messages. Gab and I had fun, tired now, gonna sleep for a week, he said. We made a lot of content. It was a once-in-a-lifetime trip, says Brian Laundrie. So obviously not much there, but it does provide a little bit of insight on what was going through Brian's mind. Because you see, in my opinion, this shows that Brian was not always planning on taking himself out, if you will. I don't believe that was Brian's plan. And in these text messages, you see that Brian's just trying to nonchalantly act as if everything's okay. We had a great trip. We made a lot of content. Never mind the fact that I murdered Gabby. I'm going to leave that out. But we made great content. A once-in-a-lifetime trip. A once-in-a-lifetime trip indeed. But he's trying to play things off as if it's normal. I don't think that he was doing this to necessarily just play things off as if it was normal to his friends. I think that he knew that there may come a time where detectives and law enforcement would look at his text messages. Therefore, he wanted to send these messages to people to try to further cover his tracks. You know, so when the detectives go look at his phone, they see, oh, he's messaging people, acting like things are just fine. You know what I mean? So I really think that that was Brian basically trying to cover his tracks in a way. But like I was saying, I think this goes to show that Brian was originally going to try to get away with this. Brian, in my opinion, for a 100% fact, was going to try to get away with this. But once ish started to hit the fan, once he became public enemy number one and the public pressure and, law enforcement closing in, I think that's when he decided to take the coward's way out. He didn't want to have to answer questions. He didn't want to be held accountable. So he decided to take himself out. So we would be left with all of these unanswered questions, all of these loose ends. It was a really selfish move, if you ask me. Which, I mean, what do you expect from someone like Brian Laundrie? But yeah, these messages might not say much. There may not be much to them. But in my opinion, it just provides you with a brief glimpse at what was going through Brian's mind in the days after returning home without Gabby. And it's clear to me that he didn't make the decision to go ahead and end it out in the swamp somewhere yet. That he was still trying to just act like as if everything is normal. I don't know if he was maybe even trying to convince himself. Maybe he was that crazy that he was trying to convince himself. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, this shows us that at the very least, I think Brian's plan was to just try to get away with this. He was just going to try to get away with this. Once he realized that that was probably not an option, he decided to take the coward's way out. But let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all soon in the next video.